Good evening. It is now 6:30, and I will call to order the Monday, July 25th, 2016 Burnsville Planning Commission. Commissioners, thank you for attending this evening. Staff, thank you very much. Our first item this evening is the adoption of the agenda. Commissioners, do you have any changes to tonight's posted agenda?
No changes.
None from commissioners, staff?
No changes.
No
from staff.
changes? With no changes, commissioners, I would stand for a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Workman,
Second.
second by Commissioner Singh. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay, and the motion carries. Our second item this evening is we're privileged to have a new planning commissioner, Dan Walter, and our second item is his swearing in. Deb, thank you very much.
Very formal thing here. Yeah.
Am I in the right spot?
Yeah. Just do this here, and then just raise your right hand
Okay.
and repeat after me. I, Daniel Walter, do solemnly swear
I, Daniel Walter, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Minnesota,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Minnesota,
and faithfully will discharge the duties as a member of the Burnsville Planning Commission of the city of Burnsville,
and faithfully will discharge the duties as a member of the Burnsville Planning Commission of the city of Burnsville,
in the county of Dakota and state of Minnesota,
in the county of Dakota and the state of Minnesota,
to the best of my judgment and ability,
to the best of my judgment and ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Very nice, welcome.
Our third item this evening is election of Planning Commission Chair and Vice Chair. And at this point, I would stand for any nominations from the commission.
Mr. Chair, I would move to appoint Commissioner Bradrick for the chair position for the.
I would accept. I have a motion on the floor as a nominee, as a chair. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Levy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. The second we have this evening is a nomination of a vice chair.
Mr. Chair, it's my honor and privilege to nominate Commissioner Stephen Benke to be our vice chair for the next year.
We have a nomination for Commissioner, our current vice chair, Commissioner Steve Benke. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Workman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries.
Thank you.
Staff, anything additional there? Okay. Moving on to the fourth item this evening is the approval of the June 27th, 2016 Planning Commission minutes. Commissioners, do you have any changes or adjustments to the draft minutes from our June 27th meeting? None from commissioners, staff?
None from staff.
Staff?
Should I abstain?
What's it?
Should I abstain from that? That wasn't here. Wasn't
I would
it?
stand for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I do move the adoption of the minutes.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Singh.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Levy. Commissioner Levy, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. That brings us to the fifth item this evening, and it is an application for Public Storage, Inc. for a variance to a setback requirement for a pylon sign located at 2000 County Road 34. That was news for me. I didn't know that was what that was. Our presenter this evening is Ms. Regina Dean. Ms. Dean, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, members of the commission. The particular site is located just south of Highway 13 and west of County Road 5. Property is surrounded by business, B3 and B4. Going to the aerial photo, this might look a little more familiar. So it is a public storage facility that was approved in 1988. The building facility as well as the sign location were approved and constructed near that time as well. Now, when County Road 5 and Highway 13 recently made interchange improvements that resulted in taking of property of public storage. Ultimately, it adjusted the property line on the north as well as on the east, therefore making the current sign non-conforming. The sign setback requirement is 20 feet from any front property line. I do want to point out that this is a pretty unique property. It's triangular in shape and has multiple frontages, as you can see from the aerial photo. The proposed sign is not proposed, the sign is not proposed to change at all in height, in location, in size, or in its current location. They are requesting a setback from the north property line essentially to 0 foot setback with encroachment into future MnDOT right-of-way when it is transferred over. There would also be a 6 foot setback from the east property line along County Road 5. This overview shows the roadway improvements that were done, very technical plan in nature, but essentially there's a retaining wall added to account for turn lanes, and again, the roadway improvements along the north property line. This gives an overview of the sign location. Again, a portion of the sign does encroach into the right-of-way. Public Storage and Dakota County are in the process of obtaining right-of-way permits and the authority to locate that sign within an easement with MnDOT. Staff does recommend approval. The Planning Commission in the past has approved similar variances in the past, for example, for kinder care in an apartment building, similar situations where taking was involved with property to recognize the sign locations. We do have one condition as part of our recommendation, that indeed that the property owner and the county do secure the right-of-way or encroachment agreements with MnDOT for the portion of the sign that overhangs into right-of-way. With that, I'll leave any questions for the Planning Commission. I'd be more than happy to answer. I'm not sure if the applicant is in the audience. Okay.
Excuse me, Dan Wilson.
We do have the representative in the audience to answer any questions as well.
Thank you, Ms. Tina. I have just a couple. I've been on the planning commission while we've done the other signs. I know the kinder care, there was a little different situation, and the apartment complex was a little different too. Is this, do we have other issues with 5 and 13 that still need to be dealt with, or is this one of the last ones?
It's one of the last outstanding issues, and perhaps the representative of public storage in the county can speak to more details.
Okay. Because our background said that this is part of a piece for them to be able to close the books from the standpoint of the property that was taken, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so we're really the first step in the process to make that work.
We're one of the steps
Okay.
in the process.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Dean. That's all the questions I have at this time. Commissioners, questions for staff? Commissioner Levy, go ahead.
So what will be the consequence if MnDOT and Dakota County don't come through with their approvals? If we do and they don't, what happens?
There would probably be a very large settlement agreement
I see, okay.
as a result of that.
Okay.
Commissioner
could be.
Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Dean, just for the benefit of our viewing and listening audience, this request or this application on behalf of storage, this happened because of construction, Highway 13 and 5, right?
Correct.
So it's not the owners or the proprietors' problem that this came about.
That's correct.
Commissioners, any other questions of staff? None? Well, this is I'm sorry, staff, would you like to speak to the applicant? Okay. This is a public hearing, and at this point, I would like to open the public hearing and ask anybody in the audience that would like to speak to this item to please step up to the podium and give us your name and address for the record. Seeing no one sprinting to the podium, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, your pleasure.
Mr. Chair, I think this is a very straightforward request. We have recommended for for the childcare facility and the apartment complex. These all happen because of construction, Highway 5 and 13. As such, I think I would beg to move that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council approval of a variance to the required setback for the existing public storage pylon sign located at 2000 Old County Road 34 with the one condition. I would like, however, to ask that the condition reads, the property owner and Dakota County will be responsible for obtaining any agreements with MnDOT for the portion of the sign that overhangs into the state right-of-way.
Thank you, Commissioner Singh. We have a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second? Second by Commissioner Levy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. Good luck. And this will go to City Council on,
Next week on
August 1st.
1st. Thank you.
thank you very much, sir. Have a good evening. That brings us to item number 6 this evening. It is also a public hearing. The public hearing is an interim ordinance amendment for Title 10, Chapter 30 of the Burnsville City Code related to legacy event signage. Ms. Dean, you guys scheduled this very well. You just got to stay at the
Back to back.
podium.
Thank you, Chair, members of the commission. To give you some background, the city currently allows temporary signs for community events, including legacy events. We have a specific section in our code that speaks to community events, and so any legacy event like International Festival or currently the Fire Muster would fall under that category. However, at the direction of City Council, we are now looking at addressing potential changes to the ordinance to make a specific category for legacy events. They felt that legacy events were unique and that serve a specific role within the community, that there should be a specific section addressing legacy events. So with that, we are proposing changes to the ordinance to create a new section, including definitions, standards, within not only city right-of-way, but also within private property, and then time and duration. And I'll go into some more specifics. So again, a quick background. Initially, in 2015, council gave direction to city staff to do some research, to do some homework, to see what do other cities do, what do we currently do to promote legacy events. What does the community event sign language say, and how can we possibly amend that? So we work with the Fire Muster event organizers as well as the International Festival organizers to see what their needs were and what they would like to see. We then came back with a report to City Council at a work session and proposed some language as a result of those meetings and as a result of our research. We then again, at the direction of council, they asked us to revise some of the language, to talk with Fire Muster Group and International Festival Group to refine the language and come back in July with another revision to that potential ordinance change. At the July 12th City Council work session, City Council did give direction for staff to prepare an interim ordinance for a 1-year period, and that's what you see before you tonight, proposed language. With the proposed ordinance, staff felt that because signs are proposed within city right-of-way, and banners are proposed within city right-of-way, it made sense to create a policy to help really create a standard operating procedures for city staff that would help guide placement within right-of-way to ensure that banners and signs won't affect sight vision clearance, pedestrian vision, or vehicles conflicting with pedestrians, for example. We also created language within this potential policy that helps guide in placement, as well as instructs the legacy event organizers to contact Gopher State One before they install any signs, because there is a potential that this could be within where there is underground utilities. A city right-of-way permit is also required as part of that policy. Planning Commission is not acting on the policy. We just wanted to make sure that you knew that there is a framework and standard operating procedures that the legacy event organizers will be following with city staff. So the language itself, just in summary, requires that the legacy event organizers provide a map to city staff showing sign locations, specifically banners, and also your yard sign. You might be familiar with real estate signs that are for open houses or garage sales, signs of that size, approximately 4 square feet and 30 inches tall. Also, banners would be allowed within city right-of-way up to 48 square feet. All of those locations would be analyzed by city staff through a right-of-way permit. As the city code is proposed, or the ordinance changes are proposed, we would allow 1 to 2 signs per intersection at the corner or the median. And the 1 to 2 signs, one would be for a typical intersection with a road, or maybe one lane going in one direction and one lane going the other direction. 2 signs would be allowed for lanes of traffic where maybe there's 4 lanes of traffic, 2 in each direction. We would allow 1 banner per intersection within the right-of-way. This was a request from the legacy event organizers that up to a certain number of signs, they requested that they wanted to have the signs 30 days prior to an event. So signs or banners 30 days prior to the event. So the code would allow up to 50 signs 30 days prior to an event, and really no limit for signs up to 17 days prior to the legacy event. Again, just pointing out, there would be a 48 square foot max banner size that would be on public or private property, and then a 4 square foot maximum size for those yard type signs within right-of-way. How is this different from community event signs? Just want to highlight a few things. Currently, community event signs do not allow banners within right-of-way. Let's see here. That's correct. There's language that allows signs 17 days prior to an event. 30 days would be the request for legacy events for some signs, the 50 signs. The community event signs allow 1 sign at an entrance or driveway for the event itself. So for example, the Fire Muster has events at the City Center Park as well as Nicollet Commons Park. So for each entrance, before they could have 1 sign, with this proposed ordinance, they could have 2 signs at the entrance area. On-premise signs are different as in square footage, as they allow up to 48 square feet versus 32 square feet. Off-premise private property signs would increase from 12 square feet to now up to 48 square feet to help accommodate for banners. And then again, the flexibility depending on the roadway type or roadway lane number, they could have up to up to 2 signs, depending on the type of, the type of road, up to 4 square feet. With that, you do have a proposed ordinance within your packet, in ordinance format. I'd be more than, or staff does recommend approval, of the proposed interim ordinance for 1 year. I do have a copy of the ordinance in the PowerPoint as well, if you wanted to go line by line. But if you don't have any questions, or concerns, staff certainly does recommend approval as proposed.
Thank you, Ms. Dean. Commissioners, questions for Ms. Dean? Commissioner Singh, you have a list.
No, I just making notes
Oh,
for
okay.
my own, no,
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Um,
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I have a few questions. The first one, this is a notice that the legacy events we are talking about are sponsored by city, school district, and athletic associations. Am I right? Limited to those at this point.
Currently, community events, correct,
Okay.
that is correct.
I'm wondering why the county, which is another level of local government, was and sometimes have events within cities, is not included. And I would recommend that be included if agreed upon by other commissioners. That's my first one. The second, this is I just need some clarification on this. If an event will be held, let's say, the 15th of August, how early can signs and banners go out? 30 days?
50 signs and/or banners up to 30 days prior to the event.
Okay.
So you can't have 51 signs. That extra sign would have to wait till 17 days prior to the event.
So I'm trying to see, if you have an event on 15th of August, I don't want people putting signs out there at the beginning of June.
So, can I answer that, Chair?
Sure.
Okay. So if it's the 15th of August, then on July 16th, they could start installing up to 50 signs and/or banners. Once you get closer to that August 15th date, 17 days before, then they can put additional signs throughout the city.
Unlimited.
Correct. Somewhat unlimited.
Yeah. And the event is on August 15th. When is the deadline to remove those signs? You know, sometimes you see political signs, the election is gone, and then 6 months after, there's still signs in the neighborhood.
There is a requirement that they are removed, let's see, 24 hours after the conclusion of the event, which is consistent with the community event signs.
Thank you.
Commissioner Singh, could we clarify, this is specifically, to your Dakota County comment, this is specifically just for the 2 city-sanctioned legacy events. And the city has rules about what can be a legacy event, and that's limited to just the International Festival and the Fire Muster. It used to be, the third was art and all that jazz, and then that stopped, so now we're down to just
Mr.
2.
Chair, I'm aware of that, but the county also has legacy events. And if the county wants to do, I mean, it's another level of local government. The school district is also another one. And, I mean, if athletic associations that are run by volunteers can have, you know, it's not very critical, but I thought that rather than if this county wants to have something, then they gotta come before a planning commission or before the city council and apply. I mean, if it's covered, you know.
Chair, if I can maybe clarify.
Yes, Ms. Dean.
We're still retaining the community event section within our city code. We're not proposing to remove that at all. This would be an additional section, just addressing currently the 2 legacy events, International Festival and Fire Muster. It could include additional legacy events in the future if the city council were to go through their policy and accept another type of event as a designated legacy event per their policy.
I can see some amount of unwillingness to include it, but that's okay. As I said, it's not very critical. Can you explain for me what you mean by off-premises sign banners?
So on-premise would be at the event location. Off-premise would be in the right-of-way or within private property.
And if we go back and look at the one I'm asking about, what I don't want is in private property, you have 2 48 square foot signs in one yard, you know. I'm a neighbor of that yard and it doesn't look too good. I'm saying we should limit, and not 2 or more than one sign. One banner in a yard, a residential area is good enough. Because people can have, each yard can have 2, the way we have it here, each yard can have 2 banners. We are giving them the opportunity to do that. It may not happen.
Technically, according to how the legacy event language is written, that could happen. That could also happen today, maybe not at the size, but it could happen on private property under the community event section of the code.
I'm just looking at livability. I mean, if neighbors have 2 banners in a yard and people live next door, you know, I mean, it doesn't look too nice. I mean, is there a possibility we limit residential for banners? I'm talking about not the small signs you put in your front yard. I'm talking about banners to 1.
That's something that can certainly be included in the language. If
I just
the rest
raised
of
it
the
for,
commission
you know,
agrees.
can consider that, and I'm okay with it, so. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioners. Commissioner Workman.
And I would, Commissioner Singh, just to bounce off of that statement, 17 days is small out of 365, and I would hope that the signs were to embrace the city and the celebration that we have for our city, but that's just my opinion on that statement. I rewatched the planning or work sessions, and there was some pushback over the banners crossing over the street, specifically in the heart of the city. Is that for the whole city as well? We won't have banners over any roads, correct?
That's correct.
As per, I think, item 1 on section 2. If a citizen was going to have a banner in their yard, that would be parallel with the street, correct? If they wanted a banner in their yard?
However they wanted to.
However they want?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I guess those are just my 2 quick questions on that.
Commissioners,
Thank you.
other questions for staff? Commissioner Levy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I may not have understood what I was hearing. I thought I heard you say that real estate signs are part of the legacy, and did I misunderstand?
Chair, if I can answer. I was trying to give a descriptive of the size of sign. A lot of people are familiar with garage sale signs or real estate sized signs, so it's comparative, I would say, to those types of signs that you might see for an open house or for a garage sale. And in fact, we do have a member of the fire muster here. I think he has a sample of what the sign would look like.
Wait,
Up to 4 square foot size sign.
we'll wait and we'll ask the applicant to come up, so. Commissioners, other questions of staff? Would you like the applicant to come up and, Don, why don't you come up and address the,
Sure.
please step up to the podium and give us your name and address
Sure.
for the record.
Sure. My name is Tom Taylor. I'm chair of the Burnsville Fire Muster. I live in Burnsville, 3217 Skyview.
Thank you, Mr. Town.
Yes,
How are
sir.
you?
Thank you. So this is the size of the signs right here. We've been using these for probably 15 years. And we just wanted to get some controls where we were coordinating with the city, what's appropriate, what's not in the different areas. You had a question on the banners with what we were going to
Yeah,
use
I
with
mean,
this.
what is
Yeah.
it, 48 square foot banners, and my point was, we don't want two banners in one yard.
And I would agree with you. There's two things that we have. One is that we have to present to the city to city staff a sign plan and banner plan. Where are they going to go? Where are they going to do it? And they have to sign off on it. Two is that I think there's only two places that we actually have on what you would call residential property. One is off of Williams and Judicial, right on that corner with a booster with that, and it's just one that we'd have there. The other place on residential property, I don't know if you could even call this residential property, I'm not sure what it's zoned, but it's one of the old farmsteads right at the corner of Cliff and Highway 13. Right there, Setback, it would be the southwest corner there. And there's that big farmhouse that's there. They allow us to put that up. So those are the only two places that we would even have it. The only other place we would consider putting up two banners would be at the corner of County Road 11 and McAndrews, right by the food co-op, that area. Otherwise, those would be the only areas.
So I think you have clarified the point I was trying to get an answer for. We're not talking, I live here.
Yeah.
You're putting two banners in my yard.
No.
Okay,
No.
well then,
No.
I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
And Commissioners, I would like to point out, it's an interim permit for 1 year. I mean, the council put a fair amount of work into this. They're gonna review the performance, and see if anything needs to be tweaked. So it's really, at this point, just a 1-year risk.
And Mr. Chair, I think they have done a good job in preparing it. I mean, it's something that is new, and after 1 year, the city council review it, and if there are changes need to be made, you know, they can do that at that time. I mean, I support legacy events. They're great for the city. It gives them opportunity for people to get together, know your neighbors, come out and have some fun. And so whatever we can do to make them, to advertise them, I think is wonderful.
Thank you. They made when we really upped our strategy with the signs versus the printed advertising, it made a huge difference with the attendance. So it really has worked well. Our goal is to bring the community together, and I think that helped do it.
Thanks, Tom. Commissioners, any questions before I open the public hearing?
I have one more question, and maybe you can answer this. A couple of years ago, there was posters for businesses we could hang. Are you
Yep.
guys gonna continue to do that?
We the carnival vendor has supplied those in the past, and then we've done some other ones. I think that's back in the strategy. We switched carnival providers this year. We haven't heard anything about the large banners with that, but yeah, part of our strategy will be distributing to the businesses.
Those are really nice, kind of old style.
We'll make sure you get one.
Thank you.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Commissioner Levy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm gonna put up an 8 square foot political sign in my yard. Where does that fall into this whole scheme of things?
It's not a legacy event, so there's a completely separate sign ordinance. Actually, it's governed by the state as to political signs, so it's a completely different topic.
Out of our bailiwick altogether.
Above our pay grade. Any other
That's quite
questions?
true.
Okay. This is a public hearing, so at this point, I'd like to open the public hearing and ask anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this item to step up to the podium and give us your thoughts. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, I would stand for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion that the planning commission recommend to the city council approval of the proposed interim ordinance amendments as presented.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Walter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. That'll go to in front of the city council on August 1st. Thank you. Have a good event. That takes us to the seventh item on our agenda this evening. Did I do that correct? Yes, I did. An application of Stephen M. Kaske for a lot area and setback variance to allow Lot 1, Block 2, Wood Home, First Edition to be buildable. This site is located northwest of the intersection of County Road 5 and 156th Street West. And we have it's our second presenter this evening, Ms. Garros. You have the floor.
Thank you, commissioners and members of the public that are here. Mr. Kaske is in the audience this evening if you have questions of him. And this is a variance application. The subject site is a corner lot located in southwest Burnsville, basically. It's on the northwest corner of County Road 5 and 156th Street West. And just to give a little bit of perspective from the pictometry, this just shows where this vacant lot is located. The cul-de-sac to the east of County Road 5 is St. Moritz Court. And what the applicant is proposing or requesting are a number of variances in order to make this lot buildable. The application does show a site plan where a potential home could be located. It gives the building pad area, if you will. And because it is in southwest Burnsville and there's not city sewer directly available to the site or within close proximity, what they are requesting then is to be able to build on the lot, and then they would need to have a septic system and then an alternate location for a septic system. So for this variance application, we did ask the applicant, and he did work with a surveyor to find that, and they've been able to come up with 2 septic system locations that would be workable for the site. For the specific variances that are requested, they are outlined in the staff report, and I'll just go over them quickly for you. They are requesting actually 4 different variances. A 1.9 acre lot area variance from the 2 acre standard. In the R1A zoning district, as of 1990, the lot size changed from a minimum lot size of 1 acre to a minimum lot size of 2 acres. So this lot was platted in the, I believe, 19, let's see here. Get this. Did here. Sorry about that. It was platted in 1972. Most of the neighborhood around this area was developed between 1954 and 1998. The city of Burnsville actually incorporated in 1964, so we're talking about a very old neighborhood, if you will. And the subject site is one lot that for some reason or other has not developed all these years. In 1992, a different individual owned 4 lots out here, and it's kind of hard to see on the graphic here, but basically there were lot area variances similar granted to the lot just to the west. This is the subject site here. This lot received a lot area variance, and this lot received a lot area variance. And all 4 of them were approved for variances. Findings from the council at that time were that the variances were not the result of actions by the property owner, but were a result of changes that the city made to the ordinance. So that is one of the practical difficulties that we take a look at. In addition to that, they identified that with other development in this area of the city, there are other lots that are developed that are R1A, the rural residential, similar size lots. So those were the basic reasons for the 1992 variances. With the variance, once it's approved, there's a 12-month time frame in which you have to build. within 12 months or start construction. The other 3 lots, as I said, were all built in 1993, so they met that. However, because this subject site was not constructed, the variance is null and void because it's much beyond the time frame. In terms of the subject site itself, some of the things we do take a look at are the availability to hook into city sewer and water. There are public utilities, and it might be a little bit hard to see, but in red in St. Moritz Court, in this location, and then there's also sewer that comes from the south up to about this location. This is about 600 feet from the site. This site, it's close distance-wise to the property. However, to get the sanitary sewer over to this point, they would have to tunnel under County Road 5, which is a very expensive proposition. And our city attorney, or excuse me, city engineer has taken a look at it. And if there was enough area on the west side of County Road 5 that could be developed potentially, subdivided into smaller lots, there might be an opportunity and might make sense at that point. But really, the adjacent property to the north is a park. The other properties are of the size that they cannot really be further subdivided, that and based on where the homes are located. And the cost of making that connection for just one home is really cost prohibitive from the city engineer's standpoint. There is water, however, that is located just on the southeast corner of the lot. It's actually in the right-of-way, located at this point. We do have a provision in the ordinance that if water is available, public water is available, then it should be hooked up. We have added a condition that they make application at the time of building permit to connect to the city water system. If there is some reason that's determined at that point in time that they can't hook up, there's a possibility that they could put in a well. From the city engineer's standpoint, they do believe that they will be able to hook into that water system. So it will most likely have public water, but they are looking at septic system locations for the site. And that would be similar, as I said, none of the other lots within this neighborhood have got city sewer and water, or excuse me, for sure city sanitary sewer. The next variance that I'd like to talk about is there is a 30-foot lot width variance that's requested. Again, this parcel is an existing condition. It's been this way for many, many years and actually decades. There is a 30-foot lot width variance that is requested. The standard today is that a corner lot be 200 feet wide. This lot is less than that, so they're requesting a 30-foot lot width variance to allow the existing lot, the 170-foot wide lot, to be buildable. Third variance relates to front yard setback. And as you can see from the adjacent property, in the R1A zoning district, the setback is typically 50 feet from the front property line. In this case, they're asking for 30-foot setback, which is our standard in a single-family zoning district, in R1 zoning district. And it is also the same setback as was granted for the adjacent home to the west. Staff feels that this is appropriate because you've got more of the tree cover. This is also a hill. Basically goes downhill. You can see what the topography is on the other side. So we do not have an issue with the 30-foot setback as requested and feel that that is reasonable. The last variance that is requested is a 2.3-foot setback variance for the east side yard setback. Typically, that is a 40-foot setback, and they're proposing to be 37.7 feet from that setback. And really from the standpoint, from a staff perspective, we feel that this setback can be made if they just, move the house pad over a couple of feet. They still have plenty of room here. They've got 26 feet currently, so it's really just relocating the building pad a couple of feet, so it does meet this 40-foot side street setback. So that is the only one of the four that staff is recommending not be approved. The others, we are recommending to be approved. In terms of the staff report that you had received, we did indicate the location, the address, and the lot area for the other lots within the subdivision. We've talked about the engineering considerations. As far as tree preservation, this particular lot is less than 2 acres, so tree preservation requirements and replacement do not apply. That is citywide when you have a situation like that. And also because this has been previously platted, it is considered to be part of a development, even though this particular lot hasn't been constructed. It still falls within that exemption because it's smaller than 2 acres. In terms of planning considerations, as we've indicated, there really have been any changes to the subject site since the council considered the 1992 variance. The site has remained the same size. The applicant did not own the property at that time. They purchased it a few years later. They had always believed that the lot was buildable until just recently when they contacted staff and we advised them of this situation. We believe that the practical difficulties are such that it's not created by the applicant. This is a situation that predates the applicant and a situation, again, associated with a change in the ordinance that took place after the property was platted. The development of the lot as proposed is very similar to other homes, not only within this neighborhood, but elsewhere within Southwest Burnsville. We are recommending, in addition to this, we did include the variance guideline policy, which is a policy that the city council put together to identify how the application relates to the spirit and intent of the ordinance. With that, there were 10 of the 19 criteria that were positives, 3 that were negatives, and 6 that did not apply, and those are primarily related to shoreline ordinance, and this is not within a shoreline zoning district. With that, the recommendation from staff is a recommendation for approval of the 3 variances subject to these conditions. Number 1, that the plan is modified to move that house a couple feet to the west so that 40-foot east setback is actually provided. 2, at the time of building permit, a separate plumbing permit will need to be obtained for the proposed septic system. Number 3, when we're dealing with a lot that's initially being developed for a subdivision, there's a requirement for 2 front yard trees. So we added that as a condition. This is very standard. And number 4, an application to connect to the public water service will need to be provided at the time of building permit application. And with that, I can stand for questions, or Mr. Kaske is here as well.
Thank you, Ms. Garros. I want to clarify, a standard lot in R1A, Southwest Burnsville, is 2 acres. If we were going to cross the street in R1, the standard lot there is?
For an R1 zoning district, the lot size standard is 10,000 square feet, unless it's a corner lot, and then it's 12,000 square feet.
So we're bigger than
Yes.
the standard lots across the street in
Yes.
R1. And in Southwest Burnsville or R1A, the 2 acre is standard through the whole thing?
2 acre lot size is what the minimum
Is the minimum,
lot size
yeah.
is now, yes.
And we're only at 1.99?
Yes, this one
Okay.
is a smaller lot, yes.
And then just to clarify, there's really nothing here in the way of variance that wasn't originally approved, except for we're asking them to move the pad 2 feet farther from County Road 5, which I think would be a better thing for the home, the farther you get. Because I drove back in there and kind of poked around some beautiful setback lots back there with a lot of privacy. This will be the closest one to the highway. So we're really not asking for anything, just for clarification, than what was originally approved. And this would also, our action this evening, if we approve, would also sunset in 1 year if no development, but the applicant could come back and ask for an extension?
That's correct,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions for Ms. Garros? Don't everybody speak at once. Okay, commissioners, do you have any questions for the
I think,
applicant?
I think you covered, just a comment, and I think you covered the points, at least one of the points that I was gonna make, about the size of the lot and other lots in that, same area that were approved, and I think Mr. Kaske bought it, did not know that it was not buildable, and, was no fault of his, but I think, if we had done it for other owners, I think it's only fair that we do it to Mr. Kaske, so. That's all I have to say, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Singh. Commissioners, would you have any questions of the applicant? None? This is a public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I
Oh,
have-
I'm sorry, Commissioner Levy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Has the applicant agreed to the four
Conditions?
proposals?
I'm sorry, I was,
Sir, why don't you step up and to the podium and give us your name and address for the
Yeah.
record?
I'm Steve Kaske. My address is 6844 29th Street Circle, North Oakdale, Minnesota. I'm totally fine with moving the setback off that corner to 40 feet. I grew up in Burnsville, longtime resident here. I grew up golfing on Orchard Gardens Golf Course. My parents bought in '73, and they still live on Fremont Avenue, south up there. And so when I graduated from college, I was looking for a house, and I couldn't really afford anything because I was a broke college student trying to find a job. And a realtor said, if you could buy a vacant lot, make payments, get a, contract for deed, on the difference, and you could build your own house. You're strong and young, and my dad built half my house, and that's what we were supposed to do. And life changed for me, and I was gonna come back, and I was diagnosed with cancer 4 years ago, so it doesn't look like I'm planning on doing that in the long term. So anyway, so I am more than willing to work with you on this, and I had thought I had gotten this change from the engineer, and I see I didn't get that change, but I talked with Greg, the engineer guy, and he was gonna change that, so I will contact him to have him change that email, and I'll email that to you hopefully in the next day or two, but yeah, I'm fine with all those. I love Burnsville. I want whoever builds on this to build a nice house that looks good, so.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you very much for your
Okay,
time.
thank you, appreciate it.
This is a public hearing, so at this point, I will open the public hearing and ask anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this motion to step to the podium and give us your thoughts. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, your pleasure.
Mr. Chair, I think, as I said earlier, I think it's no fault of Mr. Kaske, and we can build a house on this property. It will be benefit not only to the homeowner, but also to the city. Therefore, it's my honor to move that the Planning Commission recommend the City Council approval of the variance application, subject to the 4 conditions listed. Condition 1, the plans shall be modified to move the house pad location to meet the 40-foot east side yard setback standard. Number 2, at the time of a building permit, a separate plumbing permit shall be obtained for the proposed septic system. 3, the 2 front yard subdivision trees meeting ordinance standards that shall be installed with the required yard turf. And 4, an application to connect a public water system shall be provided at the time of the building permit application.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Singh. Do I hear a second? Second by Commissioner Levy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. That'll go in front of the city council on August 1st. Mr. Kaske, I wish you were moving back, but I understand your situation. We'd like to have you back in the city. Good luck with your endeavor. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. That brings us to number 8 this evening, is also a public hearing. It's an application for Cami Incorporated for a concept development stage PUD amendment and preliminary and final plat to be known as Cami Second Edition for a multi-tenant retail building located at the intersections of Williams Drive and Morgan Avenue. Ms. Dean, you're back in front of us. Thank you
Hi.
very much.
Thank you, Chair, members of the commission. We do have Brian Johnson in the audience representing the applicant, if there are any questions as we move through. The particular site is located off of Morgan Avenue, South and Williams Drive. Probably more familiar, County Road 5 is to the east, and then Highway 13 is to the north. You see this triangular piece again, that was public storage for reference. The particular property was approved as a planned unit development. The surrounding area is B3 PUD to the east. And then to the south and to the west, we have residential. They are fourplexes and owner occupied. This gives you an overview, aerial overview of the surrounding area. The current lot is vacant. I do want to point out that there is a dental office here, not part of the PUD. However, the Super America on the corner, as well as the Cami 1 project, a retail building, and the vacant site was all part of an original planned unit development. The Super America was built, then I believe the Cami 2 building came in and a CVS was proposed. That was never built, but the retail site was built in 2003. In 2007, a plan came in for a single retail building with a concept office on the northern portion of the property. That was never built. The plat was never finalized. That's the reason why the applicant is before you today. They have a different proposal, somewhat similar, but it is different. And the preliminary and final plat is also part of that, which they hope to move through.
Ms. Dean, while you're there
Correct.
and you have the screen up, could you, we outlined Lot 2, which is what we're speaking of. Can you show the commissioners the outline of Lot 1? It's a really odd lot.
Yeah, so let me make sure I'm referencing this correct. Okay, so this, as part of the proposal, this will become Lot 1, and this will become Lot 2. So you'll read in the background, just for clarification. This is proposed Lot 2. You can see with my arrow. And it stretches out to County Road 5, basically comes down like this, and kind of moves in to the west. And so
Thank you, sorry.
it is
You were there.
it is a different shaped lot. There is currently cross-access with Super America and cross-access easements in place with the retail project that's standing there now. As background, this was the original proposal in 2007. It was a approximately 14,000 square foot single retail building. Looks very similar to the Cami one that's out there today with the subway, H&R Block, I believe, and a Hacienda Taqueria is also in that location. The site plan gives, again, an overview of what that 2007 approval looked like. Again, cross-access with Super America, cross-access with the Cami 1 project. There was a sidewalk that was proposed along the west portion of the property as part of that approval. There were multiple deviations that were requested as part of that approval. There was a off-premise sign that was proposed as part of the PUD that I'd like to point out. There was also a request for the trash enclosure and the loading dock to be essentially at a 0 lot line. And then the concept stage for the office to the north. And again, this is just a landscape plan for the original PUD, just for reference. This is the proposed plat, the preliminary plat for the property. Again, this would be parcel 1 and this would be parcel 2. And the property lines, similar to what was outlined in that aerial photo just a couple slides ago. So this is the new proposal. It's for 2 buildings, building A and B, approximately 5,700 square feet and 6,500 square feet. There is a driveway proposed, drive-through. That was also proposed as part of the original 2007 project. The main difference is that we have 2 buildings now. The pond location is in a very similar location. Parking layout's very similar. An off-site sign is still proposed as part of the proposal today. I do want to point out that the applicant's proposing bike parking as well as outdoor seating. That is new from the original proposal. Also, the applicant has worked with staff to locate a trail instead of a sidewalk, but still meets the same purposes and still functions very similarly along the west side of the property along Morgan Avenue. It's consistent with our overall trail master plan that the city has. I do also want to point out, which is new, sidewalk connections into the retail location off of Williams Drive and off of Morgan Avenue. This provides connections for pedestrians to enter the retail site with greater comfort than they could be as from the past proposal. The applicant is still proposing a loading area along that 0 lot line. Driveway access is changing further to the north from the 2007 proposal, which does change the access into Super America. We do want to point that out. Private cross-access agreements, staff is recommending that that should be in place so that that's coordinated with the adjacent property owners, not only Super America, but then also with the parcel to the east, the Cami Retail One site. Brian Johnson's here, and I'm sorry, Brian Hill Gardner's here in case there's any questions in regards to engineering, stormwater type questions. With that, another thing I did want to mention is that there's an existing trail along Williams Drive, which connects County Road 5 to essentially residential and to this future trail. The way the site plan is shown, it currently shows pond and landscaping within that trail easement. Staff is requesting that that is shifted to the north to avoid the easement and recommending that alternatives occur to help deal with that. This is just an overall of the grading plan, and we can go back to that if we need to. As far as architecture, it's very similar to the existing Cami 1 project, as well as the 2007 approval. Very similar materials as far as the brick, the ephes, the detailed band across near the top. There's detailed lighting fixtures, again, which complement the existing building out on site today. We did a run through the architectural review tool that is available in your packet as well, and it does meet or exceed standards within that. I do want to point out the PUD deviations that are requested within our city code. If you have 2 buildings on 1 lot, that is a request that you need to make through a planning and development or a conditional use permit. So in this case, a PUD would be appropriate. Staff does support that request. The applicant is also requesting that off-site freestanding sign onto that Cami 1 retail site. Staff felt that that provides good visibility for the proposed Cami 2 project, as well as it's further away from any residential. So concerns about light from the sign would be alleviated by placing it on the Lot 2 or that Cami 1 project. We do have a condition within the report that states no other freestanding sign shall be on the new parcel. However, menu board type signs would be allowed accommodating that drive-through facility. Staff is not in support of the zero lot line, or I'm sorry, there's a zero lot line deviation for the loading area along the east property line. Staff does not support that request and feels that alternative, either the lot line can be adjusted to accommodate the loading facility so it does not straddle property lines, which would help alleviate potential future title issues. And another, we'd be more than happy to work with the applicant to find alternate locations for a loading area also. But as it's proposed, staff does not support. There is proof of parking that's proposed on the north part of the site. That is located here. So as the site is proposed, they meet parking with the proof of parking. They meet their parking requirements. However, they're requesting to park at 85% of what code would require based off of your general retail. And that's what's outlined here in the southern portion of the site, as long as this western portion of the site. And there's a couple of spaces north of the building. The proof of parking would help accommodate their need, should they need the 100% parking. It can be left as green space for now, and if there is either a parking problem, or if the retail tenants demand additional parking needs, that's something that could be built in the future, and staff is comfortable with that. Staff supports that request. As described, there is landscaping within the drainage and utility easement along that south property line and within the trail easement. Staff does not support the landscaping within that area. Suggestion would be to move that further north to avoid the easement. Within that same area, trees are located within drainage and utility easement and closer than 5 feet to the property line. And again, because of the easement location, because of the proposed tree location, staff recommends that those are moved, or alternate landscaping is placed in that area to help accommodate the easement, as well as screening, some type of screening from to the neighboring properties, being that they're residential. Staff does recommend approval. However, there are a number of conditions that we're requesting as part of that approval. And I discussed some of these prior. That no freestanding sign shall be allowed on proposed lot 1. Again, the Cami 2 new retail building, with the exception of drive-through type signs or menu type boards. That the plan shall be revised to shift the landscaping, fence, and stormwater pond to the north to avoid the conflict with the recorded trail easement along Williams Drive. And that this shall occur prior to final plat, prior to it being approved and recorded. We're also recommending that the applicant redesign the location of the loading area or modify the property line so the loading area is entirely within lot 1 prior to the final plat being approved or recorded. The proof of parking area did not provide a screening plan. On that plan, it shows a potential stormwater pond. The staff would recommend that a screening plan is provided should that proof of parking be implemented. That's something that could be done on a plan and not necessarily implemented until parking was needed, if it's needed. And we request that that's done prior to release of the final plat. We're also requesting that a cross-access agreement and revised easement with the gas station site, as well as, with the gas station site be submitted prior to release of the final plat. And that a cross-access agreement with the lot to the east, the County 1 project, be submitted prior to release of the final plat. And then park dedication fees have not been paid yet for this property, so that would have to be done prior to building permit issuance, and that a sign permit shall be obtained prior to installation of any exterior signs, and that's very standard for any retail or commercial project. With that, I'll open it up to any questions that you might have for me. Again, Brian Johnson, representing the property, is also in attendance.
Thank you, Ms. Dean. Commissioners, we'll start with questions of staff. Commissioner Workman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Dean, for the presentation. Can you hop over to the site plan, please? Are both lots under the same ownership?
Currently, yes, they are.
Okay.
The Cami 1 and the proposed Cami 2, correct.
And so the entry point to Cami, the original building there, the plan is to continue that roadway up through and then gain access to Super America by way of that entry point?
That would be one access point, and that would remain as is. The area that would be changing is the driveway on the north,
Okay.
access into Super America here.
And then the space between the buildings is just going to be landscaped or utility space?
Between these,
Correct, yes.
it would be basically paved area. One rendition showed, previous plan showed additional outdoor seating. So it would be potential for the landscape plan. I can't remember if they showed landscaping there. I'd have to take a look at the plan. Let me take a look.
We can certainly ask the applicant too.
Yeah, it's not,
There's
There
one
is-
tree plan there.
There is some landscaping in between the buildings as
okay.
well.
But there would maybe be potential for future outdoor seating there at some point in the future.
There could be.
On the north side, I see sidewalks where there would also be the entry point to a potential drive-in, drive-through rather, there. Is there going to be storefront entry points on that north side of the building as well? On both sides?
It does not appear. That would likely be in the applicants here. However, it's likely a back entry for staff or for visitors. Private
Okay.
visitors.
All right, so the goal would then just be to have the four stalls as 4 tenants, or however many stalls there were. So there would be no plans to split those and double it to 8 or more per building.
The plan as it's shown has 8 retail bays. Now, I'm told it's a spec building, that they don't have any confirmed tenants. So things could change, and perhaps one user could be in one building and one user in another, or 3 and 2, or whatever the
Sure,
mix-up is.
sure.
They would still have to meet our, ultimately, our code for commercial use as far as listed permitted uses, as well as the parking requirements for any user that would go into the, that would lease the space or purchase the space.
The reason for my questions is because I've been to the first building, I'm not gonna say how many times, but to Kirihela Hacienda for lunch, and it does get pretty busy over there during the lunch hour. And if there's plans for additional eating, I would anticipate that would continue to get busy. Is traffic gonna be, was that ever a concern when looking at this plan?
Do you want to speak to that, Brian?
Yeah, I can speak to the commissioners. We did look at traffic. We actually requested that some traffic information be submitted, but then we kind of reviewed things versus the zoning ordinance. Based on you know, they have to meet the current zoning ordinances with no matter what type of building use comes in. The maximum traffic volumes associated with those zoning uses will not create any problems. I mean, there's gonna be some flow within the site, you know, any restaurant type building can get that congestion, but we did work pretty hard with the applicant going back and forth through several renditions to try to get that flow through the site to work better, and I think we achieved something that's workable. As far as any traffic impacts out to Morgan or Williams Drive, I think everything is just fine with that, so.
And is Williams, is that a split or is that a one-way if you were gonna be exiting out of the south side? That is split? Or no, that is, it would be an intersection.
You can
On
get out either
Morgan.
way on.
You can't turn left and go east on Williams.
Oh, is that blocked out? There's a median there? Okay.
So if you were to exit over where the current building is, that's a one-way. But if you were gonna exit on Morgan, then that's an intersection. Or with a light. Okay,
Correct.
all right, well, if staff's comfortable, then I would be comfortable as well. That was my main concern, it looks busy. And it is busy as it sits right now, and I would hope that traffic wouldn't become an issue. So thank you.
Commissioner Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Dean, I'm interested to learn a little bit more about the reason for staff not recommending the removal of that trail on Williams Drive. I know for the, I think, the stormwater pond and that screening from Williams Drive. Why is it not recommended that they remove the trail?
The trail itself provides a benefit, not only to this site, but to the community as a whole. It is a recorded easement, and to have it removed, I think would be a step in the wrong direction as far as promoting walkability and pedestrian access to the site, helping alleviate potentially some of the vehicular traffic that you see around not only the site, but around Burnsville.
Now, if it's an easement, I think that you need to keep it there, so thank you very much.
Further questions?
Nope.
I'm sorry. Oh, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Levy.
Yes, the trail along the west side, from Williams to where? Where does it go in the north?
To Old County Road 34, so let me go back to the aerial photo. Basically
okay.
here.
Got it, thank you. Secondly, for a newbie, what is a park dedication fee?
So for any subdivided land or intensified land use, the owners of the property, when they develop, are required to pay a fee, and it helps to pay for either new parks or improvements to park facilities.
Thank you.
Commissioners, other questions? Ms. Dean, I have a couple questions. In reference to the or the cross-access agreement and the easements, the current access road looks to me like, and I tried to pay attention to both plans, we're considerably moving the access road to the north, to the property. Is there a setback where that road, we're not looking for a variance from the property line from the dental office? I couldn't get a feel for where that road's going to go from where it's at today.
They're requesting a low retaining wall along this north property line.
We
It
didn't
is
we didn't
about-
have a variance to put that easement road closer to the property line than we would normally allow, correct?
No, it's about 5 feet from the north property line.
How far does that take it from the dental building?
Let's see here. Roughly 15 feet maybe, and I'm just eyeballing it right now.
Okay, I may ask the applicant there. I have one more question. In reference to our requirements under recommendation, we specifically talked about moving the landscaping fence and stormwater pond to the north. I want to clarify what moving it to the north means. If the applicant came back and Brian, you might add to this, if they wanted to do underground tanks versus a pond, pervious blacktop, what are other options to maintain that easement and stormwater? Why have we kind of landed with this layout, if you could?
Yeah, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, the layout that was submitted kind of expanded upon an existing pond layout that was there, kept it nice and linear along Williams Drive. There is no doubt that underground storage could be done. In fact, we were concerned at one point when they were submitting calculations and we were doing the review that they weren't going to have enough capacity within that existing pond. As it turns out, they did. They're very close, but they do have capacity within that pond. But that was one option that was presented to the applicant at that time, was to possibly explore underground storage, because as you can see, the site is pretty tight, and again, that shift, how that would impact the entire site could be detrimental. I mean, they have obvious parking stall lengths and widths to meet. They've got a road to meet there as well. So I mean, if they're going to do any shifting with the site, it's probably going to mean the building has to shrink up a little bit. So there is some limited options, but again, there is the option of doing some underground storage and shrinking that pond, for sure.
And I certainly understand underground storage is far more expensive than a pond. I was wanting to clarify, we're simply talking in the background about simply moving the pond to the north. We're not saying relocating the pond to the north lot.
Mr. Chair,
I wanted to clarify
you're
that.
correct. Really what we're saying is, in order to provide the landscaping and screening that's required, because right now it's shown within the trail easement, we're saying shift everything northward to get that landscaping off of the trail easement. So really, everything would have to uniformly shift. And again, the site is tight, so that might mean, they lose some footage on the north or south side of the building to make up for that.
And Ms. Dean, that easement would have been put in place when the property was platted?
It could have even been before that. I did not do the research to see exactly when that came into place, but it's possible it was before.
And with Lot 2, there was no easement on the south end of that property?
For this property,
Yeah.
there is an easement shown. There's also landscaping shown on the south side of this property, which is not there today. There's a wall that comes right up to the trail
Okay.
and fence.
And if I remember correctly, that was modified at some point when we did 13 and 5, because we redid Williams almost all the way back to Morgan, if I remember correctly. So my last question, we do have a new entrance onto Morgan right by the stoplight, and Brian, traffic, no one's concerned about that?
Again, Mr. Chair, we really look pretty hard at the traffic according to zoning. We are very comfortable things will operate just fine.
Okay. That's all I have. Commissioners, any other questions before we ask the applicant to come up?
Just one more question, Chair. The north spike there, there's no intended development for that. I'm sorry, the one to the east. That's just gonna remain as is for now.
That's correct.
And there's probably not a whole much you can do right there anyways, but. And then to the west, is that a pond as well next to the potential overflow parking?
It is called out as a future stormwater pond.
Okay, but there's no immediate plans for that. It's just, those are all potential plans as they sit currently.
The proof of parking could trigger additional stormwater, if I'm correct,
Correct.
Brian.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Commissioners, do we have questions for the applicant?
I think I got most of mine answered.
Would the applicant like to address the commission? Please step up to the podium and give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Brian Johnson. I'm an architect. My business address is 12400 Portland Avenue South in Burnsville. And everything that Regina presented was beautiful. The moving and buffering of the parking, the moving the landscape is largely a miscommunication. That she had asked me for that before, and I didn't get it, I believe. And the one thing that staff doesn't support that we can't change is the location of the service bay for the truck. The owner can't move the lot line because of the condition, the financing for the existing built building. He says it'll take a year to find out if the lender will allow it, and it's a lender on the East Coast, and he just says he can't do that. And the idea, working with staff and relocating that service area, try it. We've sat over it a lot, and there is no other place that we can find that doesn't radically affect the layout of the whole project. And the owner recognizes that there will be an easement in place allowing for signage for the buildings, the tenants to the west of the site in the future to use the sign on County 5. And there is an easement that needs to go in place before final plat for cross traffic. So when that truck is moving, it's on an easement, and the C-store needs an agreement for the easement, and we need it because we're crossing their property as well. It's going to happen. It's a cart before the horse issue. The two parties have to say and have to pound out what they're going to be happy with. And the owner also, because he owns both sites, and we're not understanding what the interest is, that we can't have an easement to have that truck there at the same time. And so the owner has offered, let's tell them we'll give them an easement, or we'll have an easement back and forth for the two Cami properties that stays in effect unless one of them is sold, and then it has to change. We just can't find another place for that truck. It has to circulate through in a counterclockwise fashion, and there's no place that it can go that it won't obstruct traffic that needs to move other than that we can find. We'll work with you if you would like to, but tonight we'd like to to have you agree that we can have an easement to straddle the line with that service area.
Ms. Dean, can we clarify a couple of things here? Because I know there's options. First of all, there's a city code that's required, or zoning is requiring a loading zone for a building, correct?
Correct.
And we do have some history of a waiver for that, or something in the PUD that would allow us to waive that requirement for a loading zone?
That
Has been done in the past?
You can certainly request a deviation to eliminate the need for a loading area with alternate solutions, perhaps access or loading through the back of the building or the front of the building.
I'm just trying to understand, because the question I have we really have two buildings here. And so we're designating a loading for one building, but we have no designated loading area for the second building? Or is this particular loading area designated where they're gonna unload the truck and haul stuff over to the second building? I'm trying to understand, because I spent some time on the property too. Behind the original building, you talked about traffic, there's really there's just blacktop behind the original building, and it looks like, in many cases, in a lot of these strip malls, we have loading in the front and the back, depending on when they bring in food. And So I'm trying to clarify the need and what everyone's looking for. Am I speaking, correct me if I'm wrong.
And I think perhaps the applicant can address how he sees that it would function between the two buildings. And you're right, there is some distance between that building A and the loading area, so maybe he could describe how the tenants would potentially use that.
The statement you made that service with a semi is very often not done these days. I recognize that UPS and FedEx brings goods in the front door and they're sold out the front door in a vast array of situations. But the owner in this instance has not fought the idea that a truck there would be good, because that widens the possibilities for I believe that they might find it reasonable to not put it in until they know it's necessary, but I guess we still need to solve that now as opposed to later.
Okay. Commissioners, other questions of the applicant? Ms. Dean, I still need, I guess, some clarification then. What are, as a commission, what are our options moving forward? We have, in our background, asked that it be redesigned somewhere in the property, correct? And the applicant on the other end of the continuum is asking for, help me clarify what that might be.
It would be a 0 lot line deviation, essentially for the loading area to straddle the two property lines. They're asking that we recognize a cross-access agreement or easement to be in place, and that's something that can certainly be done if the commission feels that this functions as a site as a whole, and is in support of that 0 lot line deviation. And Deb, I think you want to step in.
What I would, if that is actually gonna be used for loading, then that cross-access easement should address that it's also a loading area, and that would need to be, that easement would need to be filed with the plat, so that both property owners, whether they're sold in the future or whatnot, that easement stays in place, and also addresses the loading in addition to the cross-access.
Thank you, Deb.
Commissioner Singh.
No, Mr. Chair, I just want to remove that. We'll be setting a precedent here too. I don't think it has happened previously, has it? For my time, I don't think we have ever done it.
For
doesn't
town
mean
and-
we can't do it, you know.
Correct.
So I'm just raising the point.
Chair and Commissioners, for the Town and Country Shopping Center, the most recent PUD that we did, there was an existing loading area, and that was removed, and the rationale for that, given by the applicant, was that they don't anticipate serving those tenant spaces with the larger trucks, that they would be smaller trucks and they would be coming in. We did add some conditions related to loading, that it occur, during off hours for when the units or the tenants were open. So we have done that
We
in
have
the
done it
past.
before. See, I was thinking of like semis, the big trucks, and I was going to say, you can't do that,
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
and Commissioners, just comment on that real quick. Well, one of the issues that I see is that there was again, we worked back and forth to get good traffic flow through this site originally. Because the businesses are unknown at this point, I do think it would be wise to keep the loading area in, especially if you're talking food. Oftentimes food is delivered with semis. And if we don't have that bay there and semis start parking out in the paved areas, it's gonna really hamper the traffic flow. So I would suggest, or recommend from my standpoint, keeping that traffic bay in and going with an easement. Again, like Deb said, if an easement is filed with the plat, it's there, it runs with the plat. That way, both if they wanna sell one lot down the road, that buyer buying that lot knows that easement's in place, so.
Mr. Chair, I think that would solve the problem. I mean, that would be a reasonable accommodation to solve the problem.
So to clarify, the suggestion we're currently taking down the road would be to remove number 3, correct, Ms. Dean? And then we would change the language to either 5 or 6 to specify that that would need to be in the cross-access agreement for the loading area? Am I following the bouncing ball correctly?
I think we still want to recognize the 0 lot line
Okay.
deviation, but reference that cross-access or cross easement, I'm sorry, an easement location is recorded on the property as part of the plat.
And that allows, it's not just cross-access, but it specifically, there is permission included in the easement for loading.
Okay.
May I address that quickly?
Absolutely. I was just
We've
trying
already had that discussion with the owner today, and that the convenience store is not a party to the service stall, and so that would be a different easement than the cross-access agreement.
Okay, so this would be a separate cross-access agreement between Lot 1 and Lot 2? Am I
If
understanding
that's
that
the right
correctly?
term, I don't know, but yes, it's between Lot 1 and 2.
Okay,
That's correct.
okay. If we get to that point, we may need some help with wording. So, okay. Commissioners, other questions? I do, at this point, thank you, and we may bring you
Thank you.
back up.
Yep.
Commissioners, other discussions before I open the public hearing?
Is the dental office, I'm assuming, has been made aware of this plan?
Well, I think at the public hearing, that's why I was going to we'll move to the public
It's my
hearing. So,
transition piece.
thank you, Commissioner Workman. This is a public hearing, and at this point, I would like to open the public hearing, and I would like to invite anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this issue to come to the podium and give us your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission, my name is Denise Lewis. I live at 15754 Hayes Trail in Apple Valley. The subject address, however, is 2009 Old County Road 34 Place, the Burnsville Dental Building, which was located in this area first. It was the first home of the Burnsville Police Department. And little by little, development has blocked our building. And a big concern is that we get patients who see us from Williams Drive, and that's how we get a lot of new patients. And of course, now this development will block the building entirely. And there is a sign at Morgan that directs people to the building. That sign is going to need to be replaced with something more visible. It's been there a long time and it's not very good. And other issues, the building is going to be negatively impacted. We're going to lose half of our backyard. And 15 feet, it sounds pretty accurate as far as where the traffic will be from our building. And it's a 1960s building with windows that are up high along the overhang. And we do open those windows to let fresh air in, and our view from those windows goes about a half mile to the ridge of trees that's on Big Oak Drive, I believe. And all of the staff and all of the patients obviously have enjoyed that view, and now we will be looking at a block wall and the roof of a building. And other concerns are the amount of cars that'll be right next to our building and the noise. Obviously, the drive-through could be a fast food business, and so not only noise, but odors from that. I think the biggest concern is the loss of visibility as far as the building. It'll be hidden. So a directional sign is probably the biggest priority. And other concerns when you're talking about traffic and the access that where there's a cross where SA is and the current building, traffic cuts through from County Road 5 through SA's parking lot, and there's likelihood of an accident on a daily basis. There is a stop sign that is part of the building that's already there, the part of the development that's already there. And it's a very faded stop sign that you can't read. And I talked to management people for that part of the development, and they ended up using some orange reflective tape and putting it over the letters STOP. So that's as far as we've gotten as far as traffic control there. A wise plan would be to have a stop sign at the SA so that traffic has to stop. I think the rest of it, you can see if there are cars coming, so it's not a problem, but sight lines are pretty difficult through that SA, so engineering would be smart to look at that soon, I would say. And I would assume that the drives, the one that's right behind the dental building, would be narrow enough that there wouldn't be parking possible on it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And the north spike that you referred to, that's to the east of the Burnsville Dental Building, it has been pretty neglected. The spruce trees have been there for 30 years, I would imagine, and trash, it's kind of a magnet for that. So re-landscaping that would be a good idea with some new spruce trees. And our other concern is landscaping that's more suitable, considering this development is going to be within 15 feet of us. I'm wondering if the developer would be willing to contribute to landscaping on the Burnsville Dental Building property that would coincide more with the landscaping for the development, so that it's more aesthetically pleasing for their customers. I think those are our only requests.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lewis.
Thank you very much.
I want to clarify a couple of things. I appreciate everything you said about the traffic directional stop signs. It is private property, so the city doesn't have
Right.
the right to come in and put a stop sign on the private property. That has to be managed through a private piece. When you talked a little bit about directional signage, you're correct, there's a really, really old sign that says dental office or something this way that's been there as long as I can remember. I don't know who owns that sign or why that's there. You're requesting who to put the directional signage in?
The developer.
Okay. And I would like to clarify, you talked about losing some backyard. Ms. Dean, there's no property being taken away from the dental office, correct?
There's a very low retaining wall on the north part of the Cami property. To install that, it's possible that they would have to work with the dental office owner to do any off-site grading, or if they were to, touch the property to the north, work out a private agreement with them.
But they're not losing out, there could be something during construction, but there's no change in all of this. There's no change to the dental office's property line.
Correct.
Okay.
There's no change.
Okay. Commissioners, questions for Ms. Lewis?
Well, I have a quick question. Because it is private property, we don't have any control over saying safety guidelines or precautions as they relate to something as simple as a stop sign.
Especially when I tried to work with the property owner.
I feel like that's a pretty
And
reasonable request.
orange tape on the letters was as far as it came, and it's covered with tree branches besides, so it is a bit of a hazard.
Is that stop sign that we're speaking today on the SA property or on our applicant's property, do we know?
It's on the property for the building that's already existing in the development.
That's not anything we have any
Commissioners,
control over?
we don't have control over it. With that said, as a part of the revised access agreement, cross-access agreement for this roadway, we could surely make some recommendations that they implement. I mean, again, we can't force them to do it, but we could absolutely provide a recommended sign plan.
I think that would benefit everybody, including the public. It's just purely for safety purposes.
Keep in mind, SA would have to agree to those as well. So, I mean,
David-
I think we would be okay from the Cami folks on that, but they will have to agree to that as well.
They've been participating in this process for the most part and willing to go along with.
The Super America property, I have not heard directly from Super America. They did receive proper notice, however, I have not spoken with them as a staff. The applicant could probably speak to their communication if there has been.
I'd like to share a little comment about the SA property also. The road that's behind the dental building belongs to SA. And when County Road 5 was closed, their patrons had to use that road. The potholes were so bad on the inbound lane that cars had to drive on the wrong side of the road to get around the potholes to get into SA. And I had emailed the company before, and they did respond and have somebody filling in the potholes after I sent them that notice, but not real responsive. But on a positive note, I would like to tell the developer that this plan is definitely preferable to the original one.
And ma'am, as far as the maintenance of the property, actually, the city has other avenues. We have a process where you can contact the city from a code enforcement standpoint. And if a property's not being maintained from a standpoint of trash or overgrowth or whatever, there's a process to contact City Hall, and City Hall will send somebody out and the property owner is responsible for maintaining that.
That would be good. And that north spike that we talked about where the trees need to be replaced, buses and things park there, and there've been huge holes filled with the water, and they did finally dump some asphalt into the gravel holes at that place. But considering the aesthetics of what is coming, which is very pleasant, I would think that fine-tuning that north spike would be a real good idea. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, back to the directional sign to the dental office. That sign is owned by the dental office?
I think it might be county right-of-way. I contacted them at one point, and they weren't very helpful.
Well, you need to identify the whoever is responsible for it, because with the Cami buildings, and in fairness to the dental office, people driving by there don't see the office. They need the direction.
They're having a hard time finding us now, and it's going to be considerably harder. Thank you
Can
very
staff
much.
look into that and just see if anything can be done about that? You know.
We can do research to see.
Thank you so much.
See who owns the sign.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brad Gardner. I am the owner of the dental building, 2009 West Old County Road 34 Place in Burnsville. I have been there for almost 38 years now. I'm excited. I'm tired of looking at the weeds and everything in that property, so I am excited that finally we're going to get something there. My concern to transportation and everything like that here, just as an added feature, that southwest exit, whatever, onto Morgan, there is no way that you're going to be able to cross that traffic and turn at the lights there. We see that place, we see the traffic in that area 4 or 5 days a week here, and it has really increased here. And when they did the reconstruction of the interchange at 5 and 13, everybody started using the frontage road to come up here, and I think a lot of people have stuck with that here. And so when we leave our building at night here and get on Old County Road 34 Place to try and take a left, many times does not happen very quickly here because there is so much traffic coming from the north on that frontage road to get it, and they have to stop to the lights here. So I think that I'm just trying to help the Cami thing, just saying that that isn't going to work very good here, and so you might want to rethink that here. My concern also is right now there are no parking signs on the south side of that easement road that Super America has put in. There's nothing on the side of my property, which many times I get a lot of vehicles that are parked up on the grass area, realizing that's not my property, even though I've maintained it the 38 years I've been there. I think that is an easement. Is that correct, here? And that's where we're going to lose half of our backyard because of the easement, is that?
Parking on the south side, is that what you're talking about? That people
Right now,
park
there's no parking
south?
signs on the south side as it exists right now, but I'm thinking when this all gets developed here, will there be no parking on either side? There's nothing on the north side, which is right on the back side of my building there. And so that's why a lot of people, every day I get trucks, semis, we'll get half a dozen semis every day that'll stop in there just to have lunch or, at the taqueria or Superamerica or something, and they'll sit there and they'll eat it. And then we have to listen to their, especially in the wintertime, listen to the trucks running and stuff like that here. So that's a concern for me here. Now, is it my understanding it will be two-way traffic on that road on the north side of Cami and south side of my building?
Correct.
And my concern is also, will people running east off of Morgan be able to do a U-turn to come back into that drive-through? Will that be feasible to do that? It's a big enough turning radius to be able to do that
Yeah,
here. Okay.
we reviewed, that's one of the things we reviewed several times. The initial plan that was illustrated to us did not accommodate that movement.
Okay.
So this new one does accommodate that.
Okay. Other than that, no, those are my big concerns, is the traffic and the idling that happens. Is there, you said that proposed parking permit, whatever, where the woods areas right now in the north, that is tabled for right now, that nothing will be done? Will the trees be kept as is?
There is no proposal currently for the proof of parking to be implemented on this northwest portion of the property. Now, once the owner of the property secures tenants, and let's say they find out that based off of the tenant demand that parking needs to be implemented, this could turn into parking, and at that time, trees would be
The
removed.
parking would be for,
Vegetation would be
and
removed.
you'd have to have a permit to get into that, is that my understanding? If you're a worker there, or is that open to general public, or?
The parking,
I'm not understanding what proof of parking means,
sure.
I guess.
the parking that's shown on the site itself would be for the owner of the property's use. How they decide to either sign their private parking or make it accessible to others, that would be up to the property owner. It's for the retail uses on site.
Dr. Gardner, to maybe clarify that there's so much parking currently with the buildings as they're laid out.
Right.
Let's say a tenant came in that was going to have a slightly higher use or demand of parking than what we have there. The proof of parking would then require, before they were given a certificate of occupancy and allow that tenant to move into the building, the additional parking would have to be built in that north lot before their certificate of occupancy would be granted.
Okay.
Or a building permit would be issued. And then the landowner would, whether they limited it or whether it was just open, it's essentially just parking that would heed the demand of whatever the tenant would be. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. As a personal, I have been the person that cleans that woods. And I have had to take out toilets, I've had to take out vanities, I've had to take out televisions at my expense here. And I would promote that they get rid of the trees immediately, whether they do nothing, because it's a junk yard for many of, I don't know, people just come by and figure that, we'll just throw it in the woods, nobody will see it here. Well, as Denise has pointed out many times, trash invites trash here. And if that stuff sits there, people are gonna say, nobody cares, Every day I go through and I pick up, or once a week, usually Friday mornings, I go through and pick up usually 2 bags of trash. A lot of it's coming from Superamerica, people buy their big Slurpees or whatever. McDonald's comes up here and it just throws in there. And I just thought, if I leave that, and I'm personally getting tired of doing that, it's not my property, but I like my property to be nice and presentable when my patients come. Otherwise, people are gonna say, I don't wanna come here, this looks pretty gross, And so for whatever it's worth here, I'd like to see those trees probably go soon or something like that here, but you can mention that to the owner, so, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I think that's everything that I have as far as concerns right now. Questions?
Questions for the,
Just while we're on trash, was there a plan for a trash enclosure on this? Christine?
Chair, members of the commission, the trash enclosure is located right here.
Okay.
wait,
And
let-
it is, it does match the exterior materials of the building and does have a roof as well.
Commissioner Workman, any other questions of
I would just
Dr.
mention,
Gardner?
like Chair Brederick said, if there is trash, you are our eyes, and there are people you can call at the city to enforce those ordinances, and you're the ones that are on ground zero for
Right.
that. And they do a pretty good job here.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioners, anyone else that would like to speak to this issue? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, your comments.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I think we have some suggestions on the, condition 3 that we need to clarify.
Yeah.
and come to.
Yes, Commissioner Singh. Are we, can I tell from the commission whether we are in agreement of going down the path that we talked about from a standpoint of a cross easement and making some changes? Are we in agreement that that's a reasonable solution before we start wordsmithing some of these?
I think, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I think that's the only solution I see here, taking into consideration the applicant's objection to, changing that, doing away with the loading area. I think that's the only solution we have.
Ms. Dina, before we start down that path, and I think we have agreement that we're going to go that way, what are our opportunities to make sure that the access road, the private access road, has no parking signs in either direction? So people don't park next to the,
That's something we can certainly add as a condition.
would that
of
go into
approval.
the access, the cross-access agreement?
I believe we could include that as well as within the development agreement as well,
Okay.
which would be recorded on the property.
Okay.
The, if I could, Commissioners, because it's private property, we can require signs to be put up, but the enforcement of it is up to the property owners. The city, police would not enforce.
Would not enforce because it's
Parking,
private.
yeah.
But at least there'd be no parking signs, correct?
That'd be a good start.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then to the applicant, I'm not, I wouldn't want to have this a recommendation, but you need to clean up that lot. If they own the property, they need to maintain that north lot. Commissioners, let's have Ms. Dean or Ms. Garros give us some suggestions on how we reword
Condition.
number 3.
Can we bring that up on the screen, please?
Oh, yep, sorry about that.
It's also in your background behind
On deviations.
recommendations. So, Ms. Dean, so per our discussions, how would we rework number 3? Commissioner Singh, do you have any suggestions?
I thought that Ms. Garris had, I don't remember exactly, but when she said it, it sounded reasonable to me.
Chair,
Yes, Ms. Dean.
I wrote something down and I'll read from it and
Okay.
tell me if it needs to be adjusted. An easement for the loading dock location between lots 1 and 2 shall be recorded as part of the final plat and development agreement.
Okay?
Yep.
And I think it's okay that when we moved, if we moved to recommendate, we can state as staff stated the recommendation. Any other changes, commissioners? Commissioner Levy?
We've heard about a stop sign on the private property that's got tape on it or something. can we not add a condition again, like the no parking signs, that the stop sign be visible? I hear there's trees blocking it and that it's not really that visible. Can we add something in there to that effect?
I believe that the stop sign was on the Super America property, if I'm correct.
Yeah, the recommended stop sign location is on the Super America property, so they will have to agree to it. So I think that would be more of something staff will just
Have
work
to
with
work
them on.
through from the access agreement.
With them.
And then the second point, on that northwest parking area, if it's ever added, requires then pedestrian crossing the new access road, and it's traffic. That sounds to me like a pedestrian hazard, just standing there. Is there a condition that should go along with that recommendation about pedestrian traffic safety and that, should that come about?
Commissioner Levy, I'm a little unclear where that would be.
You've got
If
the
you
extra
could clarify for me.
the extra 22 parking spaces if they ever come about.
Okay.
Okay? In that northwest corner, right. There's gonna be traffic to the drive-through, there's gonna be traffic across from Super America, trucks going through there. If there is public parking in those 22 slots, people are gonna have to cross that, whatever called street, with the turnaround for the drive-through in order to get to the shopping area. Crossing Burnsville Parkway was difficult until they put the pedestrian stop signs there at Eagle Ridge. This is asking for trouble, I think.
Commissioner Levy, I'll comment to that. This is not necessarily a road, it's an access drive. It's really similar and similar in width to a driveway aisle within a parking lot. So there will be pedestrian ramps at the trail locations, and they're likely, when this final plan would come in, there would probably be a sidewalk connection to that. So there would be an actual crossing location for pedestrians to go across. You're still gonna get people that are gonna wanna walk across right from the parking lot, but again, that's at their own risk. And it is a driveway aisle. I believe the width is 24 feet, so it's no different than a typical drive aisle in a parking lot. So they just have to use common sense. But there will be a pedestrian access, which again is why this trail on the west end of the property is so important.
Commissioner Levy, when they come in and pull the permit for the lot or how it's gonna be designed, there's code enforcement as to access and sidewalks and things that would be put in place that's already in code.
Fine, thank you.
Commissioners, I believe we may have a solution, if I would be willing to entertain a motion. Commissioner Singh?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, it's my honor to move that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the concept and development stage PUD amendment and preliminary and final plat to be known as Cami Second Edition for a multi-tenant retail building located at the intersection of Williams Drive and Morgan Avenue, subject to the 8 conditions, condition 3, as read by Ms. Dean.
Thank you, Commissioner Singh. I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Levy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. And, sir, this once again will go in front of the city council on August 1st. Thank you very much. Commissioners, that brings us to, we usually have any comments or usually have an item on our agenda. Is there any updates? Commissioners, any updates?
Mr. Chair, first of all, I would like to welcome our new Commissioner, Dan Walter, to the Planning Commission. We work very hard here so that our city can be one of the best for people to live in and to have your business and to shop. I know, I heard that you have a very quick learning aptitude, so I'm sure you'll pick up very quickly and welcome. It's fun. We have fun. We work hard, but we have fun. Congratulations and welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Commissioner Walter, we did take it easy on you this evening, but that's it. Okay. Staff, any updates?
The only thing we have is the draft agenda for the next meeting. I will indicate for Planning Commission that the Cub project will not be on there. We have it listed in terms of keeping track of dates, but they've not submitted anything to us yet, so I know that one will not be on the agenda.
Okay. With that said, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
Excuse me, draft agenda still has Paul Thomas as a commissioner.
We'll have to fix that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So move.
Moved by Commissioner Workman, second by Commissioner Levy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. Thank you very much for viewing our this evening and everyone in attendance, and have a safe drive home. Thank you.